Evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news, broadcasting live and available on demand. It's available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, and of course YouTube and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Wednesday, July 27th, 2022. It's 8 p.m. And we are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Well, tonight, first, let's queer up breaking news. Ron DeSantis targets a South Florida drag brunch at our house for exposing kids to sexually explicit drag queens. Yesterday, the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation filed an administrative complaint against our house in a restaurant in Woodwood, Miami. The complaint was founded on a TikTok video that shows children in the crowd of the restaurant's drag brunch. At a press conference this afternoon, Governor DeSantis said, quote, "We said, wait a minute, having kids involved in this is wrong. That is not consistent with our law and our policy in the state of Florida, and it is a disturbing trend in our society to try to sexualize these young people. That is not the way you look out for our children. You protect children. You do not expose them to things that are inappropriate," end quote. The brunch is normally hosted by Athena Dion, who is currently in Greece, and frequently features Queer News Tonight anchors and guests like Jasmine Price Lords, Tiffany Fantasia, and many others. Our house risks losing its liquor license over this new complaint, seeming political by the governor of Florida.
You know, Republicans are so big on giving parents their rights. Make sure that parents can protect their children. Don't Say Gay was totally founded on that BS premise. And then they're saying, no parents, you can take your children where we say you can take them. They are not pro-parental rights. They are pro-authoritarianism. And if this doesn't underscore the need for us to elect a good Democrat this November to the governor's house, I don't know what will. This frames the issue so perfectly.
I imagine at this moment, the Charlie Crist campaign and the Nikki Fried campaign are in meetings at this moment, live at this moment, to talk about this really shameful moment.
Well, and if you want to talk about sexually perverse acts, you look at John Bonet or any of those little queens, and they put at the age of 4 or 5 makeup and wigs on them. That's sexualizing a kid. What happened here was a kid enjoying an afternoon of fun with a character. It wasn't like there was a lecture on sexuality, or they were talking about what they really are, you know, whether they're taping it up or not. I mean, they were just entertaining.
Mm-hmm. In the video, you can see that they were just literally dancing and having a good time. And what makes it okay for this person to actually record and film a minor and put them on social media? Did they have the parents' permission to do that? Did they have anyone's permission to do that? So it just seems that there's just layers and layers of regulation involved with this.
The owners of our house, Rocco Caroli, and his partner, Owen Bale, this is, I'm sure, unwelcome news of the attention on our house. But I pretty much imagine that a lion's share of community in South Florida is going to rally behind this business and this drag brunch. It is really an incredible double standard, in my opinion. I attended, did many interviews. I was with John at the Florida LGBTQ Democratic Caucus at the Westin Cypress Creek over the weekend here in Fort Lauderdale, and everyone in the Democratic community was there. And we went to a restaurant at Cypress Creek called Twin Peaks, and it is a larger glorified Hooters, and an upmarket Hooters. And the sexualization that takes place in the restaurant is incredible. in terms of the busty girls that serve.
And let's get clear, they are sexualizing women.
Yeah, well, and you know, it's a different. Yes, I agree with you, but a different conversation. My point is, if you brought your children to Twin Peaks or to Hooters, Ron DeSantis would have no issue with that at all. This is an identification culture war issue that he thinks he can become president of the United States on. And that's why he is administering the marching orders in every possible way, as press secretary in every possible way, because he thinks he has fertile ground to win this election in November and become president of the United States in 2024. Does anybody agree with that, disagree with that?
Oh yeah, this is to get the red hot base even redder and make sure that they come out in droves, and relying on our allies or on the fence people to ignore that and say, yeah, the gas is $4 a gallon. Yes, I'm paying, 10% more for food and 10% less in the package. They're
and
hoping
it's the drag queen's fault.
And it's the drag queen's fault. Well, it's always the drag queen's
yes,
fault.
Well,
always.
I can't wait for Anna Navarro to get a hold of the story, because I know for a fact that she's been to our house on several occasions. So when she hears about this, I can't wait to hear her perspective on DeSantis.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity for our house and the brunch, and again, we do the shout out of support for Athena Dion. She does an amazing job of advocacy, not only in her performance, but advocacy in LGBT community. Has anybody been to the drag brunch at our
yes.
house?
Yeah, frequently.
Okay,
I haven't been to that.
have. We've been to drag brunches. We have the Palace. We have Lips here. We had one on Sunday with Misty Eyes doing Drag Queen Story Hour, which seems so apropos at the exact same moments that Ron DeSantis is doing that. And here in South Florida, Misty is doing a new storybook reading called Dear Ron DeSantis. I think the symbolism is incredible. We will follow this story very closely. One final note, is this the kind of thing for South Florida that will galvanize the LGBTQ community in South Florida to say, I have to stand up and I have to vote? Does this do it? Or
sadly, I don't think it does. I mean, we talked the other day about this exact same thing. What will it take to get people to realize that they need to get out and they need to vote, and it affects them? And we haven't been able to find that bridge to those two things. And what will that be? I don't know that a drag brunch is going to do it.
And I think this is more not only for the LGBTQ plus community, but also for the allies, because they're the ones that are going, the majority, in my opinion, that I see when I go to drag brunches are at these shows.
Yeah, and let's reveal the dirty little secret about our drag brunches. They're overwhelmingly dominated by straight people. It's not the LGBTQ
I can't tell you the amount of times that we've been at Lips.
The reason there would be children there is because the straight parents
they're
are
with their parents
because they think it's fun for their children.
Yeah,
it's amazing. We will follow this story closely. It's breaking news. Just this afternoon. Well, I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, as you know, Al Ferguson. And this evening, we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens, you will see and hear it.
Happening Out Television Network is a 501c3 nonprofit media platform in the television and radio model of PBS and NPR. But it's for our LGBTQ plus community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Well, let's welcome anchor Kal Gajraj. Kal is a communications executive and an adjunct professor. He also was honored with a Bronze Telly Award for his work as an anchor with the Happening Out Television Network. Good evening, Kal.
Good evening. Thank you so much for me being here. And now let's welcome anchor Glen Weinzimer. Glen is the founder of the Smart Ride, an annual 2-day, 165-mile bicycle ride from Miami to Key West. The Smart Ride has raised and returned over $13.9 million to AIDS and HIV service organizations across Florida in the last 18 years. What makes Smart Ride unique is that 100% of every dollar raised by its participants are guaranteed to go back to direct services, education, and care. Glen also owns Bona Italian restaurant in the heart of Wilton Manors. Bona Italian holds weekly Give Back Mondays, with 10% of all proceeds returned to local charities. In the past 4.5 years, Bona has raised almost $50,000 to help local organizations. Welcome, Glen.
Thank you, Cal. Smart Ride's just around the corner. It's going to be this November 18th and 19th. So if you're interested in joining us, we have space for you to volunteer or to ride. We actually have a fundraiser coming up on August 21st, a Saturday. It'll be at the Royal Palms, and it'll be a pool party to get people together and get out and talk about community.
Glen, let me take a moment. How do we find out the details for tickets of the pool party?
Thank you for mentioning that at www.thesmartride.org. Then go to our store.
And at the same location, if you want to ride or you want to pledge to a rider, we go to the same place.
You go to the same location, and from there you either go to the store, or you go to the registration button, or about.
And did Cal read the teleprompter incorrectly? 13.9 million. It was 139,000, right? We got the.
I'm gonna get up and kick your butt.
$13.9
Just so we're clear, the community worked really hard over the last 18 years to raise it, so it's not an insult against me. It's against the community that you will now have to answer for. But we're going to move on, and let's welcome anchor Bob Hentschel. Bob is an accountant with a local construction company and a member of various LGBTQ plus Disney Facebook groups, including the Gay Pride Disney Monorail Crawl. He describes himself as a nice widow man with a house in Dania Beach, a Disney Vacation Club membership, and a self-supporting cash flow. Wow. Welcome, Bob. I feel like it's
dreamy.
It is dreamy. It's not even like a grinder ad. It's like classy.
I was going to say, Glen, have you met?
We've met, but I like them 30 and under. So nothing personal, but it doesn't matter who you are at this table. We're not dating.
Even I've aged out of that parameter.
All right.
I'm clear about what I want.
First off, thank you for having me. The Gay Pride Disney Monorail Crawl happens Wednesday before the big days in the park. Starts at 7 o'clock at the Outer Rim Lounge at the Contemporary. We go around the monorail, stopping at the Polynesian and the Grand Floridian. We had 76 people at the 7th annual, which happened this past June. For more information, go to our Facebook group, Gay Pride Disney Monorail Crawl.
Yeah,
we have 2,000 members right now.
Oh, excellent.
You know, the Outer Rim is also Cal's favorite thing.
It's going to be one of those shows. Breaking news to this. Okay.
How do you know that?
All right.
Research.
All right, Ramrod. Bob, if I don't push you along, they're not going to let you.
That's fine. Let's welcome anchor John Hayden. John's been a journalist for 27 years and now works for several South Florida outlets, including SFGN, as community editor, covering politics, arts, and philanthropic organizations. Much of his career was spent as a celebrity journalist, covering the stupidity and scandals of Hollywood. John's interviewed nearly every big name in TV, movies, and music, and once spent an evening watching a movie with the Duke of Lancaster. Welcome, John.
Thank you very, very much. And that was quite an evening. Cal,
like
don't you have something you want to ask me?
Well, I don't know if anyone knows this, but amongst all those celebrities, John has actually interviewed me.
Really?
Yes, a couple years ago.
Oh. The Duke of Lancaster is also one of the many titles held by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. And no matter whether it's a king or queen, that person is always referred to as the Duke.
You know, one of the great things about Core News Tonight is we do lots of health features. You know, the Smart Ride does lots of health stuff. We're working on some psychiatry work.
That's why we're getting a new set with the couch.
Right, exactly. Right.
Oh, love you, Liz. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight. And this evening, we begin with the queer headlines for Wednesday, July 27th.
Well, let's begin by queering up education. Florida families and advocacy groups sue to block Don't Say Gay. On Monday, a lawsuit was filed by 7 Florida students and Centerlink against several county school boards, alleging that the new parental rights in education law violates the right to free speech and the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, as well as the amendment's guarantee of equal protection under the law. Winter Park High School student Will Larkins, one of the plaintiffs, said, quote, "Because of the vague language of the law, closed-minded parents are emboldened to become vigilantes to force their beliefs upon other people's children by suing the school district over anything they disagree with," end quote. Governor DeSantis' press secretary, Christine Pushaw, said in an email, quote, "The law says nothing about LGBTQ or any other identity. It is about protecting children and defending parental rights. Floridians don't want their kids to be exposed to subjects like gender transitioning in school, which should be a place for learning basic skills like reading, writing, and math," end quote. The bill amends Florida Statute 1001.42, Section 8, Section C to say, quote, "Classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with the state standards," end quote. Highly offensive. I return to our breaking news observation, stealing John's thunder. This law was for parents to have the choice to protect their children. The filing against our House is the exact opposite of that. Parents cannot make the choice to bring their children to a drag show because it sexualizes them. Why is the governor doing this? Because he can. First and foremost, he can do this. He has the power to do it. He has an overwhelming majority in the House and Senate in Florida, and he thinks he'll win in the courts. This is a very interesting lawsuit because they're going to have great difficulty having it both ways. Equal protection is either equal protection or it is not. And I would be willing to bet, frankly, and I haven't said this before, Don't Say Gay is going to lose in federal court. What do y'all think?
My thing is, I don't understand why superintendents across the country don't come out and talk about the actual curriculum that's being learned in school, because these things that they say that they're teaching kids is not happening in schools. These public schools are so concerned with standardized testing and teaching towards the standardized test that they don't have time to teach some of these other things. And it reminds me of, years ago when they were talking about how, we no longer say the Pledge of Allegiance in school, which was a lie, because every school up to date still says the Pledge of Allegiance in school. They never removed God from it. That was another lie. But we need our educators to come out and start talking about this and talking against these politicians, because what do they know what's happening in schools?
I want to ask all of you specifically, and I know I know we have other points that we want to talk, and I want us to come back to that. But just very quickly, in terms of an observation that I'm hearing a lot now that you just did, a lot of people are saying, why is our rhetoric broadly, let's say right at this moment, you used referencing them multiple times as lying. Very strong word. Once upon a time, we would have never, in a forum like this, doing the news, used a description like they're lying. We wouldn't use that language. Lots of people are saying to me, why is this happening? Why are we starting to use much more incendiary words in the description of the attacks that are taking place on the LGBTQ community? And this is an opportunity for me to ask you, what is angering you to use the word lie?
Because it's flat out just not the truth. And I think that we have to be black and white in our answers. There's no gray area in this, and call people out for the lying that's taking place, because we hold a special responsibility here on this platform. Politicians hold a responsibility. Our educators hold a responsibility as well. And that is to be able to promote the truth, because we're talking to an audience. People are watching this program. People are electing politicians. Educators are teaching kids in school. And everyone has some type of, mind that they're molding and trying to convince. And the days of just being able to just flat out just tell everyone anything they want, I feel is over. And I think that we need to call people out on their actions and propagate for the truth.
And I think to your point, facts are facts. You know, we just went through 4 years of a president that had fake news. You know, if I'll tell it to you enough times, you're going to believe it. And the truth here is that why can't they just stand up and say, we've never done this. Here's our curriculum. We've never said these things. We've never taken God out of the Constitution. And when they talk about kids being sexualized in school, we've created a safe space for someone who's questioning. It's called the GSA's after school. It's not in the classroom where this is being discussed. It's being discussed in private to help someone with their self-esteem, help someone from not committing suicide, or help someone to not commit suicide. Those are the things that they're doing that are positive, that are in bettering our students to be full-fledged parts of society and proud of who they are.
If I might take a moment to illustrate just this week to your point, really both of your points. President Trump, he'll always be President Trump.
Former.
Right, it's former, but out of respect, at least I always say President Trump. He went to Washington yesterday, and in the speech that he was going to talk about and whatever, 70% of the speech was on the election, the illicit election, and how it was stolen from him. And one of the phrases that he used over and over again is on the January 6th committee, the hoax of what they were doing. There's no attempt to defend the definition of hoax. There's no attempt to give examples of what was inaccurate, of what has been said. There was no opportunity to say, but all of the people that directly worked for me are the ones that have made all of these allegations that I'm now calling a hoax. And he does that so seamlessly to the point that you've just said that so many people listen to that and go in the base, oh, this must be a hoax. Right. But why? The standard of truth is no longer a requirement in our discourse in America.
Right. And I don't think they're listening when you do tell them the truth, because they're so set in that we believe what he said is to be true, so I'm not going to listen to you and the explanation of the real truth. I mean, the January 6th hearings have been pretty powerful, but if you're not willing to listen to them, then you're going to continue to believe that it's a hoax.
So in the specifics of this example, do we think that this lawsuit's going to be successful? The courts are going to say it's a violation of free speech, equal protection under the law? What do we suppose?
First off, I'm glad to see parents doing this kind of thing because it wasn't done in my day. But, you know, we just saw the overturn of Roe versus Wade. These are the courts we're up against. And I don't think they'll hesitate to throw this out. You know, I hate to be...
to throw it out or to uphold it?
Embrace it.
No, they'll toss
to reject
it. They'll
throw out the lawsuit. Okay.
Okay. Because, you know, and I read the article and I noticed that Palm Beach County was one of the school districts. Was a little bit of a surprise to me, but maybe it shouldn't be. But, you know, I'm sorry, the state is, you know, we live in a blue dot in a very red state. And I think these courts are stacked against us. And, you know, I mean, I almost wore my, you're too young to remember this, but, you know, I have the.
That has almost never been said before, by the way.
Oh my God. Wow.
I almost wore my silence equals death button tonight from the ACT UP days back in the 90s, because that's what we're up against now.
You know, it's worth noting that back in 2014, the federal circuit, I forget the number, but the federal circuit court that oversees Florida did uphold the right to marry as it, you know, finally made its way through a different circuit court. So there is that on our side. And I don't know how the appointments have gone in the last 7 or 8 years, but I kind of have the feeling that equal protection is just like a relic that will be talked about in schools, or actually probably banned from being talked about in schools. But I love how this push-off chick says, this law says nothing about LGBTQ, but then goes on to talk about transition and gender identity. That just shows the hypocrisy of that dirty, smelly whore. How's that for inflammatory references?
So I've got a question, and I don't know the answer to this. Broward County is like the bluest part of our state.
The bluest county in Florida.
And yet our schools pulled all the books. Was it mandated that they had to pull those books, or did they just do it to get ahead of it? And why did they do that if it's not the case? Why didn't they wait for a lawsuit for someone to come in and say, pull the books?
I had a meeting last week with the new executive director of the Stonewall Museum, completely different project than this, but Saturday, a week ago, he's on the cover of the Sun Sentinel and says that the books are saved by offering to take them at the Stonewall Museum. But he says to me specifically, this was initiated by Broward County Schools, not by the state, not by Department of Education. It was a preventative action to remove the books. So the chill has begun. Orlando removing safe stickers. The chill has begun. Will Larkin's message of his freedom of speech and the bullying has begun. That's what has.
But why aren't they pushing back? Why aren't they saying we're going to defy you because we're the bluest state and our parents don't object to these things in the schools? That's the part I don't understand.
Because the school board is David and they're fighting Goliath.
Mm-hmm. That's why. And I think there's also a matter of money. You know, because we seriously underfund schools.
You can define, with respect, you've repeated the same observation that I've made in a different way. Goliath becomes, I've got the most money too. And if you defy what I say, I will withhold money from you, which is what he did in pandemic over the mask issue and the cruise lines, over the mask issue and the cruise lines, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Goliath flexes his muscle. And until people stand up and say, okay, well, here's my slingshot, get ready, Goliath wins.
And these are all the talking points when he wants to run for president that he can use and say, I did this, I did this, I did this, whether they passed or not. He can say, I fought for, freedom to not wear a mask.
Well, we move on and we queer up South Florida gay news. Sunshine Cathedral responds to hate attack. How do you respond to vicious hate? Well, if you're Sunshine Cathedral, you respond with love. They held Sunday services for the first time since learning about the placement of signs which were meant to threaten and frighten LGBT congregants that were posted on church property. Well, the threats didn't work. In this week's SFGN, online and on stands tomorrow, I go inside the services and talk with the resilient people who make the place work. Executive Minister, Reverend Dr. Robert Griffin, told me there was never any question that they would do church on Sunday. One congregant I spoke with said Sunshine is his family, and abandoning the church in fear would be like abandoning his family. Ultimately, the message was, love wins. As for the investigation, no arrests have been made, but police are investigating. They have the signs, a threatening email that was sent to the church, and surveillance videos. The staff has reviewed security protocols and emergency procedures. Also, the leaders of more than 40 organizations that use the church, including Happening Out Television, are aware and are on the lookout for any suspicious activity. But the mission continues. As Senior Minister, Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins said at the start of service, quote, "We live in a time of increased bigotry, which is why Sunshine Cathedral must remain committed to a message of justice, love, and compassionate community living." And you can learn more about this developing situation in SFGN on stands and online tomorrow. I came to church for the first time in forever. I think the last time I attended anything remotely close to a service was when I saw the Pope in St. Peter's in Vatican Square. And the feelings of love and the feeling of, we're not going to let this bother us. You know, if you're going to hate, you're going to hate. We're going to carry on. And the fact is, people could be outside waiting to pick people off with a gun. There's an open field with a couple trees across the street from our parking lot. But people won't live in fear here. And that really inspired me because, I mean, and not to toot our own horns for what we do here, but coming here, or going to any place, the Manor, Alibi, wherever, these days is an act of courage. And I applaud the people at Sunshine, Al, you, and our great staff, Steve, David, Darren, everybody who makes this place run, because it's not like it used to be. It's worse.
It is worse. You know, interesting to me, very good story. I'm looking forward to reading the whole story in South Florida Gay News. On stands tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bit
right.
my tongue.
Yeah, right.
Fine.
One of the things that's is really at the heart of the story is you cannot have political leadership, evangelical leadership, zealots, and really criminals like Proud Boys attack drag story times in libraries and books and scream groomer over and over again and call you Antifa and say you're trying to sexualize your children at our house and it be led from people like governors of very powerful states and not see the tangible consequences of what happens at Sunshine. Sunshine is a result of those things. Mm-hmm. Let's make no question about it. It's the exact same connection on guns. Our gun deaths, our attacks in our schools, Uvalde, is because leaders in Texas decided not to ban assault rifles. And gun makers did that, and politicians did that, and they are responsible. Yes, somebody pulled the trigger, but somebody gave the opportunity for the trigger to be pulled. And this attack on Sunshine Cathedral, the person wrote the ridiculousness of the craze of these posters, and they posted them. Yes, that person pulled the trigger of the sign we're looking at, but somebody else put the crayon or the marker or the poster board in his or her hand. They are the ones ultimately responsible. And until we make that connection, it's going to get worse. It's going to continue to get worse, in my opinion.
And those 40-plus organizations, they're not just LGBTQ plus organizations, mm-hmm. that they're organizations of every background, gender, color, race, whatever, you know, that serves this community. Actually, years ago, before it's happening out, studio was here, I was working for Florida Grand Opera, and we actually produced a children's opera on this stage, this very stage that we did it for a season for the community. And it was a huge hit, you know, and at that time, it wasn't an issue that we were producing, you know, God forbid, you know, it got out that we were doing a kids' opera at a gay church. You know, that wasn't the headline.
Mm-hmm. That's sad. Today it would be.
Today would be.
Well, we're going to talk more about marriage going on.
So now we queer up politics. Congressman who votes no on gay marriage immediately attends gay son's wedding. Last Tuesday, U.S. Representative Glenn Thompson from Pennsylvania voted against the Respect for Marriage Act. If it passes the Senate, the bill will require the federal government to recognize same-sex and interracial marriages performed in other states, even if they are not legal in the state where the individuals live. On Friday of last week, just 3 days after his vote, he attended the wedding of his son and his husband. When asked by the Center Daily the day after the vote why he voted against it, he said, quote, "This bill was nothing more than an election year messaging stunt for Democrats in Congress who failed to address historic inflation and out-of-control prices at gas pumps and grocery stores," end quote, Thompson said. Thompson, despite having a gay son, currently has a 0 rating on the HRC's congressional scorecard and voted against the Equality Act in 2020.
Gaslighting. This is gaslighting.
Mm-hmm. How about Father's Day at his house?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So now the gays are responsible for inflation and gas prices.
Right.
But you know what? It saved the wedding a lot of money because they didn't need to get a tent because all the gays there provided plenty of shade.
Right. Exactly.
When I read this, it's like I didn't know whether to go after the father or the son, because in my mind, the son should have disowned him. At a minimum, I mean, as my phone is going off on my hip, they don't know I'm here. You know, I've circulated this meme before, and I'll circulate it again. You don't say you love your gay children and then turn around and vote for things or people who are going to harm them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's the point of the hypocrisy that we're watching. This is gaslighting because he can't say gay marriage is important. And so as a result, this is a terrible a stupid waste of time. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That's our senator from Florida that says they won't focus on inflation or all of the things that are important to us. Well, I guarantee all of us sitting here at the table, gay marriage is a central issue of our lives, the protection in our lives. And when Clarence Thomas wrote, we should revisit marriage and even sodomy laws on the same justification that states' rights trump federal protectionism because it is not specifically outlined in the Supreme or in the Constitution, makes it a central issue for us, perhaps even greater than inflation. And by the way, don't gaslight, because we're capable of concentrating on both issues simultaneously.
That's exactly
where
I'm
not
going.
Stupid. Yes. But it does not mean that marriage is not critically important to us. And by the way, I listened to a very fascinating report last night of lots of people coming in. This respect for marriage may be a lion killer in the midterm elections. So much conversation is going on what was the most important thing on the congressional vote. Not that it passed, but that 47 Republicans, I kept asking this question last week through the Democratic caucus. I kept asking this question because to me that was such a big issue. Now it is coming out that like 42 of those 47 are in highly competitive congressional races. And given the choice of coming out against gay marriage and potentially being defeated over it because there's an 82% acceptance of gay marriage, they chose to support gay marriage. Bing! Our ears should pop up instantaneously. And that's why everyone is not singing gloom and doom on the Senate vote, because the exact same thing is happening. This moron who goes to his son's marriage and wedding is incredibly at risk because everyone all over the country is telling this story. See the hypocrisy that this vote meant? 47 are going, no, I can't survive this, so therefore I'm voting yes. Well, at the end of the day, do we care why they vote yes? No. They supported our marriage. Respect for marriage.
I think it's all in one person's hands now. It's in Mitch McConnell's hands. I don't know, this is a little inside politics, but the vote was a free vote. Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the Republican caucus, did not
explain that, John. A lot of LGBT probably do not understand what this means.
Okay, so usually they whip a vote. They tell their members, you must vote this way. This is the party line, and we're going to put it get as much support for or against something. This time, McCarthy said to the members, vote your conscience, vote your district, vote however you want to. And so there was no pressure from above to force people to vote against the bill. There's already 5 solid votes in the Republican Senate caucus,
including Wisconsin,
to break the filibuster. And if Mitch McConnell allows a free vote, I really do think they can get to 10. It might not come until after the November election in the lame duck session, but I think that they might be able to get there.
Do you think that they would put the vote off that long?
Yes. If it protects their members, and if Chuck Schumer says, well, we're at 8 votes, but in the lame duck we can get to 10 because people won't have to face voters for a few more years, I think that they will do that.
I hope they don't wait that long.
Yeah, and I hope that the statistics you said actually carry true, that 87-point-something% of all Americans believe that it.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's happening to the Republicans. Because this ship has sailed. It's really interesting, not for this conversation, but it's really the interesting conversation on trans. Because trans is not there. There's not, the majority of Americans are against the trans issues that we are fighting for, or our community is fighting for in advocacy, and a significant rejection even in our own community on trans right issues.
We don't have our own community 100% sold on that idea.
So, unfortunately, set trans issues aside just for the sake of this discussion. That is not the same thing for LGBT marriage rights. There's overwhelming support of it. And what this vote, Respect for Marriage, points out is that in that overwhelming support, most of America has moved on over the last decade, and as a result are going, wait, if you want to focus a light on something, you're focusing a light on the wrong thing. And that's why the Republicans are wobbling on this issue, because the culture war that they're selling has to be on sexualizing children and their opposition to trans issues that we're talking about. That's not marriage. Right.
And that's what I wanted to mention, because do Republicans realize that the platform that they're creating for themselves right now are against abortion and sexualization of children, and taking books out of public schools and drag shows and all of these things? Like, it just, on at the top of it, it just makes them sound really ridiculous. Like, this is what you're fighting for now?
Right. But that's one of the reasons why the gentleman who went to his son's wedding didn't answer the question. They asked him about like how he loves his son and how he could do this after supporting his son. He never even addressed that. He went right on to, oh, look, shiny thing, gas prices, food prices.
Gaslighting.
And they never got back to saying, you didn't answer the question.
Who was the moronic reporter
right.
that goes, okay, I completely understand inflation's a big deal, but let's talk about your son's marriage a moment.
Yeah, and that's what they needed to do, because I think we all agree that gas prices and food prices affect all of us, and we're all upset about that, and we'd all like to see that changed. But that isn't the focus. In this case, it's something that's going to change people's lives.
Yeah.
I wonder if he gave a toast at the reception.
We, from what I understand, production worked very hard to try to find sound video of this experience.
Mitch McConnell gave his son away.
No, they were.
All right.
They were very
Bob, let's move on and let's talk about drag queens.
Okay, let's clear up drag culture. Radicals stormed drag queen story hour shouting to arrest groomers.
Do you know, you just said wake up. I actually think you parents here need to wake up. This is child grooming, what's taking place. And you should be ashamed of yourself. Every single parent in here should be ashamed of yourself for wokeism. It's disgusting. This is child grooming, what's going on? Child grooming. Who knows what autogynephilia is? Who knows what autogynephilia is? Who knows what paedophiles are? Excuse me, what?
Everyone here has chosen. It's an adult entity.
No, listen, you're a child, you're allowing child grooming going place. Don't even think about touching me.
Reading Central Library in England recently celebrated their first drag story hour. Things began in a lighthearted manner as the organizer, drag queen Ada HD, had the children dancing and having fun. It was then that two women who were posing as attendees, one using her disabled son as an excuse to be there, began shouting, calling Ada a, quote, groomer, and accused the other parents of, quote, wokeism. The ladies were part of a group of right-wing radicals known as Sovereign Citizens, who had other members outside waiting to harass the attendees. The disabled child can be heard screaming as one of the members of the group went to the back door to yell for the arrest of the drag queen. Ada, real name Sab Samuel, had to be escorted out of the library by the police for his own protection.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are allowing a paedophile sex worker to read to your children. You are sat in that room listening to a man who earns his living as a sex worker in nightclubs dressed as a woman telling dirty jokes. You are allowing him to read to your children. You are culpable for what is happening in that room. You should not be in there. You should not be allowing your children to suffer that. This is grooming, ladies and gentlemen. You are allowing your children to be groomed. They are grooming your children, and you are accepting it. You are part of the problem.
I cannot help but think, as I watched that, I saw the first video. I had not seen the second video until right now. I cannot help but think that that's what we're going to see at our house. Mm-hmm. That we're going to see this at Lips. We're going to see this at drag events all over the country, because they're learning that this is the way they can, in a minority point of view, because this is definitely an extremely small percentage minority, to take it to this point. It's like the Proud Boys thing in the California drag time story hour that was done. But this is growing, and I can't help but think we're going to watch this in many other places.
Well, you may have made reference to it already, because I couldn't remember where it was, but I remember seeing a news story about the Proud Boys trying to invade a something, drag show, something like
California.
that.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, we're exporting hate. This is American behavior. And I don't want to laugh, but my God, hearing East Enders shouting at drag queens, it's just funny, because it just sort of, for as an American, it sort of adds to a tone of absurdity to what is already hateful, yet still somewhat absurd.
You know, and I want to find the joke.
I know.
I do. I want to find the joke, but it's really hard to find the joke. And the reason is because that inane, ignorant woman inside and the exceptionally ignorant man on the outside, he is yelling, the drag queen Ada H.D. Is a pedophile. There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. It is black and white. Ada H.D. is not a pedophile. Flip Wilson, when he was doing his shtick in the 70s, was not a pedophile doing that. And that we even have to defend this argument is how ridiculous we are in our world. To both of them. One more second.
Yeah.
Then from pedophile, it jumps, of course, to sex worker. Okay. And the accusation is because he is doing drag, Mrs. Doubtfire is a sex worker. That's what he's doing. And where did he learn that? He learned doing that in watching President Trump go back to Washington on the January 6 hearings and yell hoax over and over again. The gaslighting lie is the best they can get out of their mouth and hope that that succeeds. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Hopefully it will not. But that's where they've learned this. And from a Governor DeSantis and from a press secretary of the governor of Florida who has said they're pedophiles and groomers. And this is how it trickles down through American society and, to your point, international.
Yeah, and you know, we were this last Sunday. We discussed Sunday brunch with misty eyes, and I don't know if we have the video, but I shot a lovely 15-minute thing. I'm entering it for an Emmy, but it's very innocuous. It's very boring almost. Sorry, Misty, I love you, but it wasn't anything radical. It wasn't anything over the top. It was just a lovely story time, and I encourage Governor DeSantis to log on. Oh, there it is. Yeah. I encourage Governor DeSantis to friend me on Facebook and check out the full video. Yeah.
But the problem here is nothing is talking about facts. They're just words that are thrown out there. Right. And we talked about this last week with Ricky Martin. You know, because you put it out there, someone's going to believe it's true. They don't show anything that where the drag queen did anything offensive. It was a story time. And I think there's also a problem that we probably have in our own community as well, is distinguishing between a drag queen and a trans person. Because these guys are making it sound like every drag queen is not a performer. You know, they should have arrested Shakespeare because the men played the women roles. I mean, they're playing and acting a character. They're not lecturing people on their behavior and what their sexualization should be. And just as much, a trans person is not out there entertaining. And our community needs to also recognize the difference between those two things, because I don't think that in many ways they do.
The messenger creates the message. When Robin Williams did Mrs. Doubtfire, does anyone even remotely remember any connection of how inappropriate Mrs. Doubtfire was at the time that movie came out, in that it was inappropriate that that Robin Williams' character gets into drag to take care of his own children and then move to in a television station to be able to do stories for children and television programming. There was no controversy of it. We all loved what the story was, regardless of which political perspective we had, until people like Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis and Bud Abbott from Texas come in, Ted Cruz, et cetera, Marco Rubio come in and say, you shouldn't like this because they're sexualizing. they are pedophiles, they are sex workers. Robin Williams' character in Miss Doubtfire was none of those things. And Ada HD isn't either. But they've taken control of the messaging. And it's very hard to defeat Goliath.
And this whole terminology about, sexualizing children is a terrible accusation, because that could be made for any of us sitting around this table just because, we're gay men. Any of our friends who are drag queens. I can't tell you the amount of, drag queen friends I know that have done story hours in public school libraries, and they're doing something good. They're doing a public service and they're reading books to kids. Meanwhile, these are some of the same parents who are taking their kids to Hooters for their birthdays. And you know what they do? They put them on a pedestal, they blow up little balloons, and they put them under these little boys' shirts to, show that they have breasts. And that's okay?
Yeah. And for me, that is completely okay. Mm-hmm. I think that that's fine. If the parents are acceptable, then they think that's acceptable, and Hooters as a brand feels like to whatever degree it's tasteful, then that's fine. It's not my place to wag my finger to say my voice, my opinion, my parental management of your children takes precedence of yours. I shouldn't do that. Yeah. I stay out of that.
But what makes one more okay than the other?
Well,
because we don't go out there and scream in front of Hooters, they're sexualizing the kids.
Exactly.
Those straight people are sexualizing their children.
Exactly. And by the way, if there's one place that perhaps might save us in the LGBTQ community, that's log cabin Republicans. And Glenn, tell us about what's going on.
I was just going to clear up politics, so I'm so glad for that segue. Texas gay Republicans say, we failed for not being included in the GOP. In 1998, the log cabin Republicans attempted to join the Texas GOP convention and were denied. They protested outside, fighting for inclusion after a state Republican leader compared them to, wait for it, the KKK and pedophiles. Richard Taffel, the former executive director of the log cabin Republicans at the national level, was there that year. During the protest, he shouted, quote, "We're here to draw the line. No more hatred in the name of God, and we won't be silenced," end quote. A Republican counter-protester threw a sign at his face in response. Dale Carpenter, the former president of the Texas Log Cabin Republicans, continued to fight for inclusion in the GOP for decades before dropping out of politics. Of his time as the president of the group, he said, quote, "I do not believe that we made any progress. In fact, I think the party got worse. The party's views have not changed, but the wider cultures have. That's a very striking thing to me. They are like a fossil from another age, and it's on everything. I don't believe they support a single thing that's happened over the last 25 years, end quote." I had some friends that are log cabin Republicans, and their statement to me was always, it's better to fight from the inside. And, my argument was, okay, but you're not getting anywhere. Show me where you've made a dent in Ohio is where my friend was. Show me where you made a dent. It's in some cases, being on the inside does not mean that you're going to influence that much power. Yes, it's David and Goliath again. Maybe there was something to it, but I don't think they changed anybody's hearts or minds.
Mm-hmm. Well, at the end of the day, remember, they can't. The GOP cannot, in Florida and Texas, let's use those two big examples, they can't fold LCR, log cabin Republicans, in because it would contradict the message that they need to sell, which is all of you are pedophiles.
And they just adopted a platform at the Texas Republican State Convention that homosexuality is an abnormal lifestyle. That's literally their platform. It's written down. So they can't bring them in, to your point.
Yeah. I just feel compelled to mention Dale Carpenter's name again, former Texas LCR, log cabin Republican president. If for nothing else, my goodness, hearing from my voice, there is some respect for you to come out and say this.
Absolutely.
I appreciate and respect you for saying it, because I do not reject log cabin Republicans or Republicans' philosophies of small government, conservative, financial management, wanting, some of the many things that they believe in. Those are issues that we can all debate and argue over, and then the conclusion that we come to in the majority of our democratic republic, that's what we've decided. That's clearly not what's going on here. And when Dale Carpenter says we failed, as we're showing you in that headline, it's a reflection that reasonable voices in the LGBTQ community that are members of LCR for a long, long time, that even just wanted to come to the Democratic or to the Republican convention in Texas were rejected. They couldn't even come. We don't even want you in the room with us, is a reflection of that's not what they want. They don't want reasonableness of debate in our democratic republic. They want the authoritarian control of what they want. And therefore, if that's true, and I do think it's true, I have respect for Dale Carpenter to say it, because likely he's burned every bridge that he created in his entire life on a philosophy that he thought was important for him to propel Republican thinking, just not the extremist, crazy ass thinking that we are watching.
That's very important, and I'm glad you said that, because all Republicans aren't haters. And the fact that he was there trying to do good and try to be reasoned, but he couldn't reason with unreasonable people that weren't willing. So the conservative idea of like finance and all of that, I'm 100% with that. Like if that's how you feel financially, great, but then you find the compromise. And there's no compromise. It's either you're like us, and we don't even want you, even though you're conservative, to be part of our party, so you're not welcome.
And I think that, log cabin Republicans are wasting their time because the GOP doesn't respect them or want them. And I think where they can be most helpful is to frame and have those conversations to pass sensible LGBT legislation and to help get some of these laws regulated and to make sense, like you said, of some of the things that we want to be able to push. So not necessarily being so far left, but to be able to frame the conversation, the narrative of how to get some of these messages across.
Before John takes us on to Sunshine and our participation with him, as I make the compliment for Dale Carpenter, now let me take two big swipes at LCR. First, this year, in the last 12 months, LCR had its national convention, and of all places, where did they have it? They had it at, the compound up in Palm Beach. And they gave Donald Trump's wife their Legacy Leadership Award. Now, if that's not going to the trough and begging for Oliver Twist, please, sir, may I have some more? You get what you deserve when you do that. Second, that's a swipe at you. Second, over this weekend, Ron DeSantis and Marco Rubio and other gang members of the culture war that they're trying to sell in Florida met at the Seminole Hard Rock. The lieutenant governor spoke Saturday night in front of DeSantis and in front of Marco Rubio and said, we are going to take back our education because we're going to teach the ABCs, not the LGBTQs. Now, it's a really good soundbite. But first, could you please provide a single example where we're teaching LGBTQ in schools, especially when your law says K through 3? It doesn't exist. It's a lie. It's a lie. The lieutenant governor tells a lie Saturday night. Do you know who helped kick off the Friday night party at Seminole Hard Rock for the Sunshine Conference? The log cabin Republicans of Florida. Please, sir, may I have some more? Oliver, I'm telling you
what I wrote this afternoon.
Yeah, if you don't get out of the workhouse, Oliver Twist, you can never be free. And John, let's go to.
You're really good at this transition thing, Tom.
I'm trying.
You know who needs to go to church? Log cabin Republicans. Right. Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church, and it's right here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, with more than 30,000 watching every week.
I'm Jason Parsley. I'm the executive editor of the South Florida Gay News, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
I'm glad to see that. That's wonderful.
My boss.
Yay, that's and that's John's boss, and I need to talk to you. That is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, then share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large audience watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, or Cal's first generation TiVo?
Shady.
That was shady. Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of the Hotspots magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Kal Gajraj, John Hayden, Glen Weinzimer, and first-time appearance as an anchor. Congratulations, Bob Hentschel. You did great. We will see all of you daily at 8 p.m. And to our LGBTQ plus world, we wish you good night.
Good night, everyone.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure that